In spite of not always having had the most consistent quality and output as a group, superhero games have seen a significant uptick over the last decade or so, and we've gotten to a point now where it looks like things are only going to get better in the years ahead. Even now, in fact, there's no shortage of excellent superhero games to dive into for those on the lookout for them, and here we're going to rank what we feel are the best of the best in that category. Batman: The Enemy Within. The first iteration of Telltale Games had a spotty track record with licensed properties in its latter years, but one in particular where the studio knocked it out of the park was Batman. And though the first Telltale Batman game was solid enough in its own right, its sequel, The Enemy Within, took things to much greater heights. Its portrayal and characterization of Batman and the Joker deserves all the praise in the world, and the complex, nuanced dynamic between the two characters is something every Batman fan needs to experience. Prototype. A shining example of a diamond in the rough. That's probably the best way to describe the original Prototype. Sure, it wasn't a perfect game and had obvious rough edges that probably should have been sanded out, but ultimately it excelled where it really needed to, delivering an adrenaline-fueled, endlessly enjoyable power fantasy sandbox. With Activision Blizzard now owned by Microsoft, hopefully a Prototype revival is something we'll get to see in the not-too-distant future. X-Men Origins Wolverine. X-Men Origins Wolverine may not have been a critical darling when it first came out. It certainly didn't help that the movie it was based on was underwhelming, to say the least. But time has been kind to the hack-and-slash game. Taking inspiration from the golden age of character action games, Wolverine's combination of gruesome violence, linear design, and punchy combat was one with a lot of merits, even if it could get repetitive from time to time. If nothing else, it serves as a solid template for what a future Wolverine game should look like. Hopefully, Insomniac Games feels the same way. Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Long before the MCU-driven explosion in popularity for superhero team-ups in mainstream media, Raven Software's Marvel Ultimate Alliance brought together a vast catalog of beloved Marvel heroes together in a single, endlessly entertaining action RPG experience. In addition to being a Marvel fan's dream come true, Ultimate Alliance also delivered legitimately good combat, boasting an excellent level of variety across its vast roster of playable characters. Even after having received 2 sequels in the years since its release, the original Ultimate Alliance's impact is hard to forget. Marvel Snap. Marvel Snap is one of the more recent entries in this list, but even though the game's still in the early stages of its active life, it's already earned itself a place here. Developed by former Hearthstone devs, Marvel Snap is a dangerously addictive card battler where it's all too easy to get stuck in the one more game loop. Combining quick, addictive rounds and engaging progression with all the inherent charms of Marvel properties, Marvel Snap is well worth looking into for anyone with an interest in collectible card games. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. A linear cinematic action-adventure game isn't exactly the sort of game you'd expect the makers of Deus Ex to work on, but even though it was very much out of Eidos Montreal's typical wheelhouse, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy still turned out to be a really good game. It was not the most imaginative and certainly not the most nuanced on the gameplay front, but thanks to excellent authentic portrayals of its core cast, it's nonetheless a solid game that Guardians of the Galaxy fans shouldn't be missing out on. Saints Row 4. It might not be your conventional superhero game. You play as the President of the United States for starters, but Saints Row 4 still certainly deserves a spot on this list. While the argument that the Saints Row series was better when its over-the-top elements were more contained certainly has merit, the pure moment-to-moment enjoyment that Saints Row 4's bombastic open-world sandbox delivers is undeniable. From the self-referential humor and the gleefully dumb story to the explosive superpowers you had at your disposal, there was plenty to love in this open-world romp. Injustice 2. Injustice 2 certainly suffered at the hands of poor monetization decisions, as so many of WB Games' releases do, but for DC fans, this was still an unmissable experience. Not only did NetherRealm Studios deliver an accomplished fighter that was an absolute blast to play, it was also an excellent adaptation of a vast cast of beloved DC characters, while also boasting an excellent story mode. Infamous 2. With Sucker Punch having moved on to Ghost of Tsushima, we don't know when or if we'll see a new Infamous game, which is a bit of a shame, because as Infamous 2 proved back in the day, at its best, this was a franchise with impressive potential. Binary black and white morality decisions aside, Infamous 2 let players choose whether they wanted to live out their ultimate superhero fantasy or their ultimate supervillain one, and no matter which path you picked, the game delivered with its riotously entertaining combat, traversal, and open-world sandbox. Batman: Arkham Knight. Discourse around a Batman Arkham Knight tends to focus a bit too much around aspects of the game that were disappointing, from how it used the Batmobile to the terrible state of its PC port. And while that criticism is certainly warranted, there's no denying that on the whole, this was still an excellent game. Not only is Arkham Knight still one of the best looking games we've ever played, it's also yet another incredible Batman simulator that built on the greatest strengths of its predecessors in some impressive ways. Sure, the bigger is better philosophy may not have worked out exactly the way Rocksteady would have hoped, but there still was no shortage of things to love about Arkham Knight. Marvel Spider-Man. When it was first announced that Insomniac was working on a Spider-Man game, the general consensus was positive, and upon its launch in 2018, Marvel Spider-Man proved that that was indeed the case. Thanks to Insomniac's impressive understanding of the biggest strengths of the beloved property, Marvel Spider-Man felt like a simultaneously authentic and unique take on the franchise, while also impressing thoroughly on the gameplay front with its combination of quick combat and endlessly enjoyable web swinging. Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales might not technically be a full-fledged sequel to its 2018 predecessor, but in spite of its relatively smaller scale, it improved on the first game in nearly every way possible. Not only was it somehow able to create an engaging story with Peter Parker almost completely out of the picture, it also offered significant gameplay improvements with the addition of Miles' unique abilities, which impacted not only combat and stealth, but also the traversal. On top of that, with a shorter runtime and more focused approach, it also significantly cut down on the bloat that the first game had undeniable issues with. Batman Arkham Asylum. Right when people had basically lost all hope that we'd ever get another good Batman game, Rocksteady came out of nowhere with what's probably one of the best ones to this day. No game captures the aesthetic of Batman as effectively as Arkham Asylum does. From the combat and the stealth and the boss fights to the stellar Metroidvania-esque level design, Batman Arkham Asylum was, and continues to be, an absolute masterpiece. Marvel Spider-Man 2. After already having scaled incredible heights with its first two Spider-Man outings, Insomniac somehow managed to up the ante once again with Marvel Spider-Man 2. The traversal is not only significantly faster, but also adds in the excellent web wings, while the combat is improved massively with an added emphasis on abilities and cooldowns. Meanwhile, Marvel Spider-Man 2 once again delivers an excellent story and unforgettable villains in Venom and Kraven the Hunter, with Insomniac continuing to exhibit a masterful understanding of what makes a Spider-Man story tick. Batman Arkham City. Even after all the incredible superhero games we've played over the last decade or so, it's hard to look past Batman Arkham City for the top spot in a list like this. After having already captured the essence of Batman perfectly in Arkham Asylum, Rocksteady took things to even greater heights in its follow-up, delivering an unforgettable open-world experience that is, to this day, the ultimate Batman simulator. From the combat and the stealth to the gadgets and the traversal, Arkham City felt like a significant step up over its already incredible predecessor in so many ways, while also boasting excellent boss fights, authentic portrayals of iconic characters, and a captivating story. We can only hope that we'll get to play another new Batman game at some point in the future that'll be able to live up to Arkham City's greatness. So what are your thoughts on this? Go ahead and share them in the comments below. And if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon to get new video updates. We upload every day and would really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching.